welcome to Cabinet, Monday the 10th of January 2022. Welcome to a brand new year. As you know, this is a remote meeting. It's being live streamed and will be recorded for posterity. So can I start by saying, are there any apologies? I can see that Councillor Margaret Wilkinson isn't with us at the moment, but I know she is due to be with us at any time. Okay, next item is minutes of the last meeting. Can I ask for your approval, please? That was on the 20th of December. Can I formally move?
I'm happy to second for you, Leader.
Thank you. Is everybody happy with that? Yep, good. Okay, the next item is to receive any declarations of interest, and I know that that I have one. Give me while I just turn something off. Bing. I have a declaration of interest under agenda item 5, which is the revenue monitoring period. I think it's, oh no, it's not. It's not. Number 5 is the capital monitoring period. Sorry, 1st of April to 30th of November. There's a reference there to All Saints School. My grandchildren attend there, but I do have a dispensation to speak, to vote, and to stay. It's about a fence for the school. And I think there are 2 others, one from Catherine and one from Ben. Do you want to go first, Catherine? No, Ben, I'll go first then.
Thank you, Leader. Similarly to when this issue came before Cabinet on the 13th of September last year, with regards to the consultation around the leadership and governance of 2 nursery schools within the Penarth area, as I'm an LEA governor at Evenlode Primary School, I have dispensation to speak and vote on issues affecting the school, and as one of the outcomes may well be the amalgamation of leadership of Bute Cottage into Evenlode's leadership, then that would be something that affects directly onto Evenlode. But I will be, as I did on the 13th of September, will be staying for that item and speaking and voting as I have dispensation. Okay,
thank you very much. Catherine, do you want to come in now? I didn't see his hand up first.
That's okay, no problem. Yeah, very similar to Councillor Gray. I am a LEA governor for Evenlode, so in relation to the item regarding leadership and governance of the nursery schools and the primary schools, I just need to let people know that I am that local authority governor, but I do have dispensation for the Standards Committee to be able to listen and take part in the events.
Okay, thank you very much. There's no one else. There's one other item that I just want to highlight, is that there is a reference, a late reference, taken as agenda item 11.1. It's a matter I've decided which is urgent, and it's in relation to the corporate risk register Q2. I'll be bringing it forward so that we can deal with it at the same time as also deal with the report that's before us today. Okay, in that case, I will continue. The next item on the agenda is a report of the meeting of the Cardiff Bay Advisory Committee of the 1st of December. I think it was quite a short meeting from what I understand. It is there. Councillor Burnett was also present. I don't know if he wants to make any comment in relation to anything that's within the report itself.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, it was an exceptionally short meeting, actually. I think it's probably about 15 minutes. And within that, the representative of the Penarth Tourism and Visitor Association made a comment to do with cycling. And I made a comment about the temporary withdrawal of next bikes. I don't know. Some people seem to think that there's something of an issue there, but as I said, my 10-second comment seems to have been a subject of much discussion. What I am pleased to say, though, is my understanding is the middle of January they come back, so we will be able to use the next e-bikes that have been so popular before too long. But I just wanted to clarify that. But on that point, I suppose as I was there, I would move we note.
Okay, that's fair enough. In that case, I will formally second. But as you say, I think there was just a comment about it's a little less busy in cycles at the moment, and that's possibly due to next bikes. I know I've just been somewhere where the next bikes are there, or should be there, and they're not there at the moment. So hopefully they'll be back next time I visit the same place. Okay, if that's happy, yeah, very happy with that. We just note the minutes. Yes. Okay, next item is the capital monitoring period for the 1st of April to the 30th of November. What this report does is simply update the members with regards to the capital programme. The report details the current position with regards to the capital programme, and of particular note are the following, so I'll make some issues here. One is some of the schemes are experiencing increased costs, as we all know, due to supply demand, either to do with COVID or possibly Brexit or just inflation. New grants have been received from Welsh Government to fund a number of these initiatives. Some schemes will not be able to commence this year, or start dates have been delayed, and it's been requested to carry forward budgets to 2022-23, which is normal kind of December year. If we can't commence them this year, we'll have to commence them next. This has particularly affected the housing improvement programme in part due to problems in the supply chain, as I said, and increased cost of materials, and therefore £11.661 million has been requested to be carried forward. If you look in the report itself, it does give you the breakdown of those reports. Some schemes will commence in February 2022, with works completing next year. The financial implications of this obviously are that there will be no longer a requirement to raise unsupported loans to fund the capital expenditure this financial year, and the level of revenue contribution to capital will reduce by £18.786 million to £14.723 million. Obviously, this will in turn see an increase in the housing revenue account, the HRA reserve, at the end of 21-22. However, this has been taken into account when the next revision of the housing business plan is presented to Cabinet during February 2022. And welcome, Margaret. I see Margaret's with us. The impact of the pandemic and Brexit on this programme will continue to be monitored, obviously. And Appendix 1 of the report contains details of the programme on the scheme on a scheme by scheme basis. As I said, there are some issues within it. I have declared one of the sorry, this is the capital, yes, I have, in one of them. It is a standard report in some respects, and we are recommending Cabinet to note the progress in the 21-22 capital programme, and that the Cabinet refers this report to Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee for consideration. The third item would be that the Cabinet notes the delegated authority in relation to the Barry Wayfinder project. 4, the Cabinet notes the use of emergency powers, and there are some 9 of them, one of which is the one I've declared on, which is the All Saints Church in Wales primary school fence. There's issues in terms of there with obviously the Barry B waterfront, Band B, Barry waterfront. We've had to carry forward money for that because it hasn't started, and we're still in consultation with the developers. There's obviously the next item there in relation to Dennis Power's flood resilience project, and there's one there about the WLGA food poverty grant. On top of that is the 5th recommendation is that we approve the following changes to the 21-22 and future capital programmes, and there are some 34 of those, and most of those are in relation to things like carry forwards, VIAs, or indeed some new projects. And as I said, there's detail on page 4 of the HRA carry forwards, which are there to be considered. Unless anybody wants to go through any of them in any detail, I'll pick some of them out. They're the 5 recommendations that we noted. We refer to scrutiny. We note the delegated authority. We note the emergency powers, and we approve the changes under paragraph 5. So I don't know if anybody wants to come in. Liz, do you want to come in, please?
If I could, Leader, there was just a couple of comments that I wanted to make on the report. First of all, as most would know, the Penarth Food Pod was established with a WLJ food poverty grant, and opened in August, and a brand new purpose-built pod was installed just before Christmas. It is so welcome, and it is providing support for quite a number of people, as well as helping to avoid food waste. So going from strength to strength on that. On page 3, there is a mention of play area in Stanwell, just in case people were querying which play area that would be. Actually, you don't need to specify. There is only one play area in Stanwell Ward, and that is adjacent to St David's Crescent, called the often called the St Cyrie's Park as well. But there's only one, so absolutely delighted that that is getting an update. But going to the main body of the report, if you look at paragraph 212, it mentions the Big Box Boyd project. This is a fantastic achievement by Oakfield Primary School, that established their own Big Box Boyd, which is very similar. Well, it's what we copied actually to do the food pod, a pay-as-you-can facility for the local community. And so successful has it been. It has supported the establishment of 25 others across South Wales. I only read something the other day that there's another one opening up very shortly. So massive thanks from me for their work and for their support of communities, not only in the Vale but right across Wales. And then I suppose the one thing that most people would be questioning is we've got the update on the Barry Waterfront School. And there are two things that we need to look at. There is obviously there needs to be a change because of rising costs to the capital amount, and that means a slight alteration to the Section 106 agreement. That agreement has been circulated. I'm awaiting confirmation that it's been signed off by the consortium, and also the piling is due to start on the 24th of January. I haven't heard anything to say that it's not starting on the 24th of January, but again, I'm expecting an update later this afternoon to let me know if there have been any glitches. If there are, we might be back having meetings on the roadside in the waterfront, but I hope not. And I hope that everything now will continue to progress. But on that note, I know that Margaret wants to come in as well, but on that note, I would be delighted to formally second the report, Leader.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the comment on the waterfront school, because as you say, what we don't want is deja vu when you and I attended the site on a weekly basis to just make sure things get progressed. Margaret, I'm glad to see you back. I know you had problems getting in. So.
I was going to apologise. I had problems getting on. But can I just say about Oakfield Primary School, it has made a great difference in the Gibbonsdown ward. People are very, very happy about it, and they go there regular. And if it wasn't for that, I think some of them would be in a poor state. Yeah. So I'd like to thank Oakfield for their school log cabin scheme, and every other school that's coming on the site now. I think it's great. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much. No, I agree. It's wholeheartedly agree. Okay, if there's nothing else, that we've been asked to carry out the 5 recommendations which I mentioned. So, and Liz is formally seconded. So, are we happy to move on? Yes, we all agree. Good, thank you. The next item is the revenue monitoring period for the 1st of April 21 to 30th of November 2021. Fairly standard report again. It outlines the position with regards to the revenue budget for the period, and that takes into account the impact obviously of the pandemic on the council's finances, which have been substantial, I have to say. Although again, I would reiterate, as I've said every time, it's an absolutely amazing situation because we've had the COVID hardship fund to help us and every other authority in Wales. So there's a thank you for that. However, saying that, the revenue position for 21-22 continues to be challenging for the council, both operationally and financially, as I said, due to the pandemic. As I said, funding is available from Welsh Government to cover these financial pressures to the end of this financial year. But there's the proviso in there, then there's the caveat that it is only there until the end of this financial year. The funding available for social care by the hardship fund will now taper off too during the remainder of this financial year. We still continue to make claims on a monthly basis, obviously in arrears, because you make a claim of what you spent for the COVID-related expenditure, and the monthly breakdown of these figures is shown in the report anyway, so you can see for yourself. The table is in paragraph 2.8 of the report, details the current projections for the year. Social services, as it was before, and environmental housing both continue to report overspends, so it's no shock that we've been seeing this all the way along. All of the reported overspends will be met from their reserves held by those particular service areas. The details of each directorate are contained obviously within the report, and the position will continue to be monitored, so everything is there if you want to read it. The report details the projected favourable balance of the general policy budget due to a favourable variance of £2 million. In relation to capital charges, something similar to what I said earlier on, we're not spending so many, so we're not borrowing some money. And current estimates project that the council tax budget will overrun with surplus on the collection of £2 million. But again, as I've said on other occasions, partly that's due to the fact that during the pandemic we didn't collect some of the money, but we've collected some during this year, and we're now starting to seek recovery of old debt too. So there's a mixture of reasons why that is the case. It was also agreed on Cabinet on the 22nd of November 2021 that this sum should be transferred into the Council Fund as it has been, and its use will be considered by the Budget Working Group when it's taken into account all factors in formulating a balanced revenue and capital budget for the final proposals, which will be presented to Cabinet and Council in February, and then to Council obviously in March for the final determination. And as part of the final revenue proposals for 21-22, an efficiency target of £500,000 was set for the council. No efficiency targets were set for schools, and the services are currently working on schemes to achieve these targets. However, as I've said previously, it is anticipated that there could be a shortfall of £170,000 against that particular target. So the recommendations that we have simply are that the position with regard to the authority's 21-22 revenue budget be noted, that this report be referred to Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee for consideration. As I said, the report gives us a total of the amount of money's come in. We've had nearly £9 million worth of hardship funding coming in. There is a hold on some of those expenditure, things like free school meals and social care costs, which we're still waiting for further information on. But in addition, Welsh Government have confirmed that they will be providing a grant to support the cover of the loss of income for the financial year, and clearly we will continue to do that. The other thing that we've done is, in terms of Welsh Government, not only have they done a hardship fund, but they've actually given out grants for certain things, and the council has actually processed the £735 payment in relation to the financial recognition for the social care workers. So money's come in and we've dealt with it. Obviously, the impact of the pandemic will be discussed further throughout this report. But if you look through it again, it shows you where the unplanned reserves are within social services and environmental and housing, and then there's a detailed breakdown of each of the areas that are covered and the way that they've spent it. In terms of the efficiency savings, that is also covered within the later terms of the report, which shows where those funding areas or those saving areas will not presumably be achieved. So I'm going to formally move the recommendations, which are quite simple, but I will look for a second, and I see Peter wants to come in, please.
Yes, Leader, thanks ever so much. With your indulgence, I'd just like to sort of crowbar in a rather useful comment, but by starting by saying that the use of reserves to offset the overspend from neighbourhood services and transport has been previously reported, and it is recognised that it stems from waste management that includes recycling, which, while being at remarkably good levels, with this council's most recently recorded performance placing us second best in the UK, It is a costly operation and made no easier by coronavirus. And I would like to pay tribute to all our staff involved with delivering, perhaps more appropriately, collecting this service through some of the most challenging times, particularly the loaders and drivers of the vehicles. And that brings me to the latest added challenge, the Omicron infection rate and anticipated peak of sickness absence. We're all well aware of the national shortage of drivers, and this council has been able to manage by diverting any spare capacity to maintain the priority collections of food waste, black bags and recyclables, and delaying the collection of garden waste. The anticipated peak of absences now coincides with when we need to prioritise road gritting. I regret to report that we may not be able to offer the same service of previous years regarding the collection and recycling of Christmas trees. We will be releasing details of the amended Christmas tree collection service through our media channels this week, but it's fair to say that the service would use 5 vehicles and 15 staff over a 2-week period, and due to COVID, we cannot guarantee that these staff will all be available. Therefore, we will be advising of alternative Christmas tree recycling options where trees have to be taken to a specific site across the Vale on set days, in addition to the existing options for our ring and request green waste and our household waste recycling centres. If our residents are unable to access any of these recycling options for whatever reason, we will be able to collect the trees as part of our normal black bag waste arrangements later this month, with the trees going to our Energy from Waste facility in Cardiff. So thank you for letting me insert that.
No, I think it's important because the point is, and you know, if we go back to the previous capital report, it talked about some carry forwards, and one of those was the waste transfer station and things, which is clearly something we need to do. But again, costs are escalating in terms of that, and everything you say in terms of recycling and collection, it costs us money. So, you know, and it is inevitable that if we, in fact, I think yesterday I heard we got hit by a couple of absentees because of the COVID, and therefore our drivers are down. So even though we were anticipating it, it's come a little earlier. So I'm afraid we're going to have to ask our residents to bear with us. But one of the things I would say is, if we are doing the green call and collect service, then that's only for green bags, so that if you have a Christmas tree, you should cut it up and put it into the bag, because it isn't just a case of leaving the tree out, because that will not be collected. You know, we will still try and do this green service in terms of green bag service as we do throughout the winter, but you need to be minded of the way in which you would do that. Otherwise, as you say, you can turn up at the recycling centres without an appointment. As I understand it, that will be the case. So there should be facilities, but more information will come out later in the week. Ben, would you want to come in, please?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Not a plug on the Waste Management Service, but of course we thank them for everything they've done through the Christmas period, as indeed all of the officers and staff who've had to work through, and clearly carers have been a big part of that effort, particularly with regard to revenue monitoring. Though I just wanted to pay tribute to all of the work that goes on to make all of these claims that you made reference to, Leader, in terms of the COVID recovery money and the extra support and grants. You know, I mean, like all of us here, I'm a regular attendee at the relevant scrutiny meetings, and we have some interesting and robust conversations about finance, and it's clear that we have cross-party support for the pressures, and acknowledging the pressures, and in fact, you know, supporting the fact that the pressures moving forwards into the following year are there and are present. And I think we all understand why we hold the reserves we do in particular services, and I'm pleased that we're able to use that reserve to make sure that we're covering off the overspend that's detailed, or the potential overspend that's detailed in this report. Clearly, you can never completely cover everything, and there are a number of people continuing to wait for care, and that is unfortunate. And so, whilst talking about money's not the solver of everything. So my shoe-in plug would be we're putting together options for people to become carers. Our Fast Track to Care programme that's been launched early part of this year is a great opportunity for people to come forwards, and that will really help make sure that we have enough carers to be able to provide the sort of support we can. I would say we've issued advice to those in receipt of care and those who are waiting for care to keep them informed as much as we can. But from a revenue position, we're in a strong position to be able to continue to provide a service, and that's what we're here for, to make sure the most vulnerable people in our society are supported. And it comes in many forms, and so I just wanted to pay particular tribute to being able to continue to get that sorted, and frankly all the work that goes on in the background to try and land a massive responsibility and budget into something which is quite close to where we need to be, without knowing how many people are going to need care in a following year. So thank you to all of those involved in making that happen, and we continue to monitor it closely. So if it hasn't already been seconded, I'll second the report.
Thank you very much. I think you raise a good point on the basis the demographics of the authority is rising all the time, and our aged population goes up, therefore it needs more care. And one of the reasons why we've got to use unplanned reserves for social care in terms of children's services and adult services, because the pandemic has also had an impact in terms of that as well, and the amount of support and care we need to supply. So it's not unusual or unexpected in some respect is probably the best word, that we're going to have some problems in terms of finance, particularly in social care, and indeed that's coming up later in the risks register area too, so we can discuss that then. Okay, everybody happy with the situation in terms of revenue? Okay, the next item is the Cabinet work programmes. This is basically to inform members of the progress to date in respect of the Cabinet quarterly work programme for the period October to December, and to confirm the quarterly work programme for January to March 2022. So basically the recommendations is that the updates of the Cabinet quarterly programme for October to December 21, which is at Appendix 1, be agreed. And 2, that the Cabinet quarterly work programme January to March 22 attached at Appendix 2 be endorsed. And if I refer to Appendix 1, which is the work programme up until the end of December, I'm really pleased to see that all of them, apart from one, have been dealt with fully through Cabinet, with the exception of the one which was basically due to a delay because I think Welsh Government I can't find it now, Welsh Government has changed the date due to the pandemic for the report to be referred to them. So basically we haven't missed it as such. It's a case of the matter has been extended, and therefore it will be deferred to a further time. In terms of Appendix 2, then that clearly shows where we're looking to bring reports to March, and I'm glad to see that all the ones that were appended for the 10th of January, which is this committee, are actually before us. So I think it's fairly straightforward. It is a bit of housekeeping, but it is good to see that we've addressed all of those that we plan to address. I don't know if anybody's got any comments or anyone. I formally move the recommendations anyway.
And I'm happy to formally second, Leader.
Okay, any comments from anybody? Nope. Good. Okay, the next item is item 8, which is the audit of the Vale Glamorgan Council asset assessment for 2021 and the performance and progress against external regulatory recommendations and proposals for improvement. A mouthful, but basically this is a report to present the certificate of compliance issued by the Auditor General for Wales following the audit of the Council's assessment of the 2020-21 performance, which can be found in the report at Appendix A, and the progress to date in addressing the existing recommendations and improvement proposals from our external regulators, which also can be found in Appendix B. As you know, each year the Council publishes an annual assessment of its performance from the previous year. The summary assessment for 2021 has been informed by quarterly performance reports to all members, so it's nothing new. Performance monitoring reports, which do incorporate progress against key regulation actions, are also given on a regular basis. Apart from that, the Insight Board, which are officers, also provide the senior leadership team with regular updates and the latest version of the monthly insight tracker is included in as part of the quarterly performance reports to all scrutiny committees. So the recommendations that we have is that the Cabinet note the contents of the Vale Glamorgan Council's Performance Assessment Certificate for 2021 and refer the certificate to the Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee and the Governance Audit Committee for their oversight. But the Cabinet is also asked to look at the progress we've made, and we'll do that in a second, in addressing the recommendations and improvements for proposals made by our external regulators, and also refer the report to the Governance and Audit Committee again on the 1st of March for their consideration. And then finally, the third recommendation is upon consideration of progress against the recommendations and improvements proposals made by our external regulators, the Governance and Audit Committee is asked to refer any comments or recommendations they have to Cabinet for their review. So we're sending it to them for consideration, and I'm sure if they have anything, then they will come back to us. But as I said, I'm really pleased to see that the Auditor General has determined the Council has discharged its duties in accordance with the statutory requirements set out in Section 15 of the Local Government Wales Measures 2009 and the statutory guidance. It is also important, I think we've made this point before, that this is the final compliance certificate to be issued, because that's now been superseded by the Local Government and Election Wales Act 2021. And as we all know, we have had lots of pressures because of COVID, but we have made a significant improvement in what we've done, and indeed 11 of the 46 actions on the tracker were completed as of December the 6th, 2021. 30 actions relate to local regulatory proposals, of which 6 have been completed, and work is progressing on the remaining 24. Of the 16 actions related to national regulatory recommendations and improvement proposals, 5 have been completed, with work progressing on the remaining actions, and work will progress over a longer period to fully address some regulatory proposals due to the resources required, the nature and the complexity of the services involved. So, as I said, we're being recommended to note the contents, but we're also being asked to review the process, the progress made to date. The Appendix A, as I said, shows the certificate of compliance, which I'm really pleased to receive, and Appendix B shows our progress against the existing recommendations and improvement proposals. They are there for you to see. I don't know if everybody wants to make any comment in relation to their own areas, but it is a comprehensive report which is reported both to ourselves and to scrutiny on a regular basis. And clearly one of the things we have to do is comply with the recommendations, and this certificate shows that we have. Have you got any comments? No? You sure?
No, other than to formally second the recommendations, Leader.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to see that we've progressed in those things. The next item is agenda item 9, and I will be also bringing forward agenda item 11.1, which is a matter which I decided urgent because it's a reference from the Governance and Audit Committee in conjunction with the Corporate Risks Register for Q2, which is the update to Cabinet. This is basically, as I said, an update on the position of the corporate risks to September 2021. The report provides members with an overview, and it's a very comprehensive one at that, because it was a hell of a lot of paperwork. Overview of the corporate risk register for Q2, and the risk analysis is incorporated in with the corporate risk summary report, which is Appendix A, which is the big report, for want of a better word. This actually does enable us, our officers, to look at the trends and the cross-cutting nature, and you can actually look down at the detail. At this stage, what we've been asked to do is to note the Q2 position of the corporate risks from April to September 21, and the identification of the 2 new corporate risks, which I'll come to in a second, for inclusion in the register. and I know there were references made in the governance audit and governance committee. So that we're asked for the to note that, and the inclusion of the register. The two risks is the market fragility risk and the demand management, and then separately service capacity risk, as outlined in the Appendix A. But also Cabinet to consider and endorse the corporate risk register for Q2 and the associated corporate risk summary report included, including the endorsement of the two new risks. If you recall, last time we looked at this, I think we had 16 risks. This would take us up to 18. The report itself at Appendix A looks at all the areas and splits it down to things like the executive summary, the risk descriptions, the risk register summary, the risk heat map, the thematic heat map, the risk management plan, the actions of exceptions, and the scoring definitions. As I said, there are now 18 because during Q2 period, 2 risks have been emerged and they're asked to be included. They are specifically in relation to the risks in social services, and that's one of the things we talked about earlier on, was the demand for social services is ever increasing, but the fragility of the market and the fact that we're not always able to meet demand is one of the issues which is a risk. So it's subject to discussions at the Council Strategic Leadership Team. Regular consideration is given to these sort of issues. So as I say, the two areas are the market fragility, which describes the weakness and vulnerabilities within social care sector to provide social care services. So the overarching risk associated with this is obviously one of financial collapse that has an implication, not of ourselves, but of organisations we rely upon to provide the care, or for the stability and the continuing care of our most vulnerable. And again, demand management is a viewpoint, because what can it be defined as is insufficient social care capacity to meet the growth in demand, and that's clearly an area we have an issue with, because, as I said earlier, we have a rising demand in association with the ageing population, and we also have a rising risk in terms of children being looked after too. So it isn't just the adults, it's also the children. So we do have this particular issue. So I think it is right and proper that we put these two risks back into the risk register. The report does then go and talk about COVID-19 at some detail, to be honest. But in fairness, when this report was written, that was correct, but things have moved on. So I'm not going to refer to that, because I think we've all seen the changes in the COVID legislation, the way we have to live. We talked about it at the time we were on level 0, but in fact now we're on level 1. So it is a snapshot in time and nothing more than that, and that's what I would prefer to leave it as. And it obviously does talk about the issue in relation to Brexit, and talks about the trade deal, the Northern Ireland Protocol, etc. So all of these things have an impact on what we do and how we provide the services. So I've told you what the recommendations are. I think it's sensible that we add those to the list. I will now refer to, so I'm sorry about this, I'm going on a bit, but to the reference from the Governance and Audit Committee, because clearly when they had the report to them, they talked about the issue, and the director quite clearly made the point that the first additional risk was a market fragility within the care home and care provider sector, related to the sufficiency of staffing, which meant possibly would be a reduction in the number of beds for domiciliary care. Also, the difficulty of recruiting and retaining staff, and indeed, care homes are the same as us in that recruitment. There was an issue in terms of the council still had a presence within our care home sector, which is a good thing because we still have our own homes, which does give us some element of control, but clearly That is something which we can control ourselves, but there are others within the market which we can't. Another key challenge was for care providers was the ability to secure insurance cover, it seems, which is becoming more and more difficult, which is obviously an issue which needs to be considered. And indeed, the committee were concerned about that and asked for more information regarding the issue of insurance and how they could be provided. And the second additional risk related obviously to them, as I said, demand management and the service capacity in order to meet our ageing population and the needs of our younger pupils too, our younger children too. So basically, the reference that came from the Governance and Audit Committee was that they noted what had currently happened. They asked us to endorse the inclusion of the new corporate risks, which obviously we will do, and they wanted our comments to be considered, which I've just read out, and obviously the fact that they would like some more information in relation to the insurance issues being faced by the care home sector and the care providers. So I think everything that they discussed was sensible. I think that the addition of 2 is extremely sensible. And in fact, I didn't know anything about the insurance risks either, insurance problems. So indeed, if we have any reports, it would be good for us to have that, as well as the Governance and Audit Committee. So I prattled on for far too long, so I apologise. But it is something which is extremely important, particularly during the COVID-19 and the Omicron variant issues. I think Ben had his hand up first, so I'll go to Ben, and then I'll go to Liz, if that's okay. So Ben, do you want to come in, please?
Thank you. Yeah, it's just obviously after putting my hand up, you've already highlighted some of the detail that Lance went into with the committee when asked to cover those issues. I think it's just really important to remember, in the context of these providers operating in the COVID environment, it adds to this increased risk. And right through the Christmas and New Year period, I was in regular contact with senior officers within social services, and they were continuing to work hard in this demand management to try and facilitate as much care possibility. But as we have heard in the context of train and bus timetables changing because of lack of people, talking about whether or not schools will have enough teachers to be open, etc. Clearly, there were challenges right through that Christmas and New Year period. And I've got a meeting with providers on Friday to understand some more of those pressures. But we continue to have those conversations anyway. But absolutely, I totally support these being an additional 2 risks on our register. It's ultimately going to fall on us to make sure we can provide this care, and I think it was right to note the fact that with our own capacity in the, I'll refer to it as a market, but within the sort of the residential home sector, we're in a position to more quickly provide support and potentially transfer people, etc. But yeah, it is a risk that's high and acknowledged, and I'm pleased to see it included, because there. And just briefly on the context of recruitment in a wider context, children, young people, part of the service in terms of children looked after, but also more generally, social work vacancies right across Wales are a challenge to all the local authorities, and this cannot be just solved by money. Again, I go back to the point I made before, and we need to do everything we can to recruit and support people to work with us. And other reports we've had as a cabinet clearly notes that our turnover is actually really good when it comes to our workforce, and the people want to stay working with us. But it's right that we look at this demand management in the context also of how we can continue to have enough staff to support that. So just reiterate what I said earlier, and my thanks to everyone who kept the service running throughout the Christmas and New Year period, and we acknowledge and fully understand. And I think it's really important, and something which I had a conversation about with Care Inspectorate Wales recently, is it's good to see that there is a corporate and a political buy-in to understanding the pressures and understanding the situation, and I think that puts us in a really strong position as a council to face these challenges, and I think that's really important to note. So thank you.
No, I think that's a fair point. Liz, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I think building on what Ben said is I was looking at paragraph 2.6 on the report, and although the report is like a doorstop. I mean, there's so much really detailed information there. But in paragraph 2.6, it actually talks about several of the issues being largely outside the council's control.
Yeah.
And I think that when we look at not only the issues that we face across all our services, the complexity of those services in terms of how we deliver public services to the residents of the Vale, and I don't think we can overstate the fact that in such times, public services become crucially important. Mm. And our staff recognise that, which is why we have seen staff so prepared to be repurposed, be moved into other roles to fill gaps where maybe people are away from work, or extra capacity needs to be delivered. And I know in my own area, yet again, in terms of delivering business grants to support our businesses that are finding it so difficult, there will be people from other areas of the council coming in to support the regen and finance team. So there are so many areas that are being affected by the issues related to COVID, but as I said, none more so, I don't think, than our care services. And I think that the work they've done over, well, the whole pandemic, but particularly over the Christmas period has been absolutely superb. So I don't think anybody else has seconded the recommendation, so I would be happy to formally second, Leader.
Thank you very much. It is important, because I know that 2.7 talks about the corporate risks. Some of the risks are constant state of flux, and we talked about COVID and we talked about Brexit, but clearly the social care sector is another one, because we rely not necessarily on our own staff all the time, but we rely on others to continue to provide that care and ensure that anybody who's in hospital and is able to leave hospital is not stuck in hospital because there's nowhere to go, and that's something which has obviously been an issue over the last couple of months again, and we just got to thank everybody for doing the work, not only our own staff but all those who work in the care sector per se. Eddie, you want to come in, please?
Yeah, concur with everything that's just been said, and a report like this just needs to, I think, for many that have got a single issue, might be important to them, but just in the context of this report and everything this council's dealing with, I think they should just be aware of that. Sometimes some of the issues they're arguing that it should be the top priority may not be the case.
Yeah. Okay, good. As I say, it's corporate.
Sorry, Lee, just one more thing. Sorry to Columbo it right now. But when you mentioned about the people leaving hospital, I think it's really worth pointing out the majority of people waiting for care are not in a hospital setting. And actually, it reminded me that I do need to also pay tribute to all of those families who are providing that care, and we're asking them to continue to potentially push themselves further than maybe they're in the best position to do so for a long period of time, and really all of the work that goes on with unpaid carers right across the Vale is really important to recognise, and actually the risk of losing those is referred to in the report, but I think it's important to acknowledge that without those unpaid carers and the families who are stepping in, we'd be in a much worse situation. So thank you to them. I know you wouldn't have missed that out. I just as we talked about hospital, I think it's important to talk about the community care as well.
No, that's fine, and that's why I said what I said was that we need to thank everybody within the social care sector, and not necessarily our offices, because it isn't just our offices, it is everybody. But as you said, we have so many private carers sort of looking after their own family, looking after their mother, looking after their spouse, whatever, in order to ensure that they stay in their own home and they're cared for in a proper manner. So and you know, let's be honest, nobody wants to go in hospital, nobody wants to go in a care home unless you can possibly have to. You know, I know, you know, we all have our own personal feelings. So, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It is across the board that the pandemic has brought this to a head, in maybe a bit more than it would have been. But let's be fair. You know, we've always said for quite a while now that we have an aging population. Who need more care, not necessarily in a care home, but they need more care in some shape or form. And the other thing, of course, is we've had a lot more issues in terms of children too. So, and the COVID pandemic has probably exacerbated all of it. So, yeah, can I thank you for the comments that you made? I totally agree. Okay, all right. Let's go off to people, to be honest. Next item on the agenda is item 10, which is the report of the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Education and Regeneration, Liz, in relation to an update on the consultation on the proposals to amalgamate Butte Cottage Nursery with Evenlode Primary School and Colgan Nursery with Colgan Primary School. Over to you.
Thank you, Leader. Had problems unmuting there. First of all, apologies to Cabinet. I will be going through this report in detail because I think it's important that we go through all the sort of the various competing factors that are relevant. So if I give you a brief overview and then we'll go through it in more detail. So as the Leader said, the purpose of this report is to advise Cabinet on the outcome of the statutory consultation on the proposals to amalgamate nursery provision in Penarth by amalgamating Butte Cottage Nursery School and Evenlode Primary School and amalgamating Colgan Nursery School with Colgan Primary School. Consultation period, during that time we had 238 responses who were asked to indicate whether they would support, not support, or have no opinion over the proposals. And then proposal 1 was amalgamating Butte Cottage Nursery with Evenlode Primary, and of 238 individual responses, because a lot of these responses covered people commented on both proposals. There were 48 in support, 169 opposed, and 21 offered no opinion either way on proposal 2, which was the Colgan Nursery and Colgan Primary School proposal. Out of the 238, there were 47 in support, 73 opposed, and 118 that had no opinion either way. There's I'll give a summary of the key themes, and those are all laid out fully in Appendix B of this report. And then, following the consultation, the completion of this consultation period, we are required to take a decision on to whether to progress proposals further with the publication of the proposals for the regulated alteration in the form of a statutory notice. So that is the decision before us. What I will say is that we have got a sort of an overview of the responses, etc. here. However, I have read every single one of those contributions that have been made. I have read the comments of every single one in detail. I have a rather huge spreadsheet that I have gone through. So I suppose the backdrop to this, as we said in the original report, was that the council has sought to move towards a primary school model for 3 to 11 years education. And so in doing that, it's meant amalgamating both infant and junior schools, such as happened with Dinas Powys Primary School and St Helens Primary School, as well as amalgamating separate nursery schools with primary provision, such as it happened in Cadoxton Primary School. Evenlode Primary and Colgan Primary School are 2 of 3 primary schools in the Vale that do not currently provide nursery education. The other primary school that doesn't is St Nicholas Church in Wales Primary School. However, there is a proposal going forward in relation to that one. On Monday 20th of September, the consultation was launched following the resolution from Cabinet. And I think it's fair to say, because there has been a little bit of confusion, that there are specific reasons why consultations are carried out. And those rules and regulations are in accordance with the School Standards and Organisation Wales Act 2013 and the Schools Organisation Code 2018, which brackets we refer to as the code. And that lays out exactly what we should do in terms of any consultation. And the consultation document that was issued, which is included within this report, outlines the Council's proposals to reconfigure the nursery provision in Penarth as laid out. Meetings were held, they're actually virtual meetings, were held with the staff and governors at Butte Cottage Nursery and Cogan Nursery, which were attended by council officers. And I have to say there that I actually attended the virtual meetings with the governors of both nursery schools as well. I also visited Butte Cottage Nursery as I was invited to go and witness the teaching and learning there. Unfortunately, social distancing wasn't possible, so I wasn't actually able to witness teaching and learning there, but I was able to have conversations with people that were in attendance. So as we said, the council received 238 responses by the closing date of the 5th of November. And I think it's worth pointing out that such consultations are not a referendum. They're not a straight yes or no vote, because if you got loads of responses based on one particular topic that actually wasn't relevant to consultation, it could be completely outweighed by one very strong representation made on something that was materially relevant. So somebody had pointed out something that we hadn't thought of and that we didn't have an answer to, then that might have held more sway. So looking at the levels, I think it's fair to say that if you look at the staff and the governors that were affected by the proposals of all organisation, all facilities, they were actually in favour. But similarly, as I said, it's more to do with the content of the submissions that were made. So, if I could, I want to go through the various themes that were raised by parents, or actually by anybody that responded to the consultation. There are quite a lot, but I think it's important that we go through those. And I know that Cabinet will have read the consultation report, but I do think that it's important. So the first one is that nursery schools would lose their identities. And on page 5, this is responded, and it says, that we have actually moved for a number of years to a 3 to 11 model for primary education. And it's, for us, it's what we see as an efficient model of education, providing equality of provision across the Vale. If these proposals go ahead, the governing bodies would be supported to ensure that the positive elements and good practice from the existing nurseries would transfer to the amalgamated schools. And this actually was a conversation that I had with some people as part of the conversation. I said, if there are things that you think should change or either continue or not continue, actually you have an opportunity. You are parents, you are governors, you can make your voices heard within those establishments. And while staff and pupils would transfer to the new entity, which is the primary school, there are absolutely no plans to move from the existing site proposed. Existing site, which is you know, as part of this proposal. So there would be no children and staff would not move from their existing sites. Theme 2 was nursery schools tailor provision specifically for nursery pupils. Well, both nursery schools are excellent, and you know, we're really lucky, aren't we, in the Vale, that we have got really, really good schools. Both nursery schools are excellent, and the purpose of these proposals is not to address educational standards. The key focus of you know, if these proposals are approved, the council would work closely with staff and governors to support the transition to the new model. And the key focus of this transition would be to ensure best practice is maintained and all pupils receive the best provision. Theme 3 talks about it concern that there is a cost-cutting exercise motivation behind the proposals. And as I've mentioned previously, the main driver for these proposals is to ensure equality and consistency across primary provision in the Vale. And this model has got several benefits, including developing continuity and progression in children's learning from the age of 3, so that you don't go into one provision, stay there for a year to 18 months, and then have to get back used to another one. And particularly if foundation phase goes for a few years, it provides that continuity of learning, you know, whether that be policy, strategies or pedagogy across all ages. The senior leadership team and governing body across each school would result in a removal of duplication of management and governance functions. And parents would only need to familiarise themselves with one set of policies and one set of communications. The proposal, I mean, we have to be honest, the proposals are not motivated by a cost-cutting exercise, although it's noted within the consultation document that the proposals would result in an overall saving of £140,000. And you know, we've got to take that into consideration when we look at education budgets. I mean, our education budget is over £100 million a year. But the money, the vast majority of the vast proportion of that is actually delegated directly out to schools to manage. And it's determined, the money follows the child, it's determined on a per capita basis. So the money would still go to these schools exactly in the same way. So no schools would lose any funding. Theme 4 is the relationships between nursery and school are already working. And absolutely agree, there are good working relationships between the primary and nursery. But there are opportunities for greater collaboration and streamlining of communications. Parents would only have to familiarise themselves with one set of policies. There's greater professional development opportunities for staff who actually can be part of a wider age range rather than just specific areas. Theme 5 was nursery pupils would be overwhelmed in a bigger setting. Well, you know, this is one of those things where you say, well, actually, if there hadn't been misinformation within the consultation process, and it's something that I am very concerned about, is people would understand that there is no increase, there's no overall increase in places available. There would be 4 fewer part-time nursery places actually in Cogan, and both nursery units would be on their same site. So from the children's perspective, there would be absolutely no difference in experience. But one of the main benefits of amalgamation would actually be through improved transition, and pupils could be introduced to the primary phase informally throughout the year. And that would reduce the impact of the September transfer. Because, you know, when you actually think of a little one going into school, and I said some of them are only there for a year and they've just got used to nursery and then they have to move. The more we can do to actually improve that transition, the better. Theme 6 is the rationale for the proposals. is unclear. And I apologise, but I'm actually going to read these because they were set out in the consultation document and they are clear. And it's a single governance and accountability regime with a single head teacher and governing body with responsibility for all phases of education at each primary school. Opportunities for greater professional development. Opportunities by being part of a primary school teaching across all phases of primary education. A single set of policies across all year groups incorporating areas of best practice from the individual schools. A single vision, strategy and ethos across all phases. It generates revenue savings associated with increased running costs for standalone associated with the increased running costs for standalone nursery schools, which would release additional funding into the overall schools funding formula. Opportunities to make efficiency savings through economies of scale
is now joining
and joined up procurement.
I think we lost Eddie. He's come back.
Oh, right, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm online. I'm online.
Okay, thanks, Eddie. Streamlined communication between parents and staff with a single point of contact throughout all phases of primary education. And it says there, no proposals have been presented to relocate either nursery school. Therefore, no rationale is set out within the consultation document with regard to this issue. And I think that was set out very clearly in the original consultation document. Theme 7 is that even load is oversubscribed. We have spaces for within all our schools for pupils that live within their catchment areas. We have schools that are popular, where there are a greater level of applications, but at entry level into our schools, we have sufficient spaces for children.
Williams.
But
is now exiting.
We're having problems with Eddie at the moment, I'm afraid, but we'll carry on. The council's response is that the number of nursery places available would remain unchanged as a result of proposals 1 and the admissions arrangements and the admissions proposal and oversubscription criteria in place would not change. So nothing would change from the situation at the moment. Theme 8 is loss of outdoor space and increased traffic. There is a longer response, but simply put, neither of the affected nurseries would move site as a result of these proposals, and therefore there would be no difference to their current situation. Theme 9, Cogan Nursery takes in pupils from beyond the Cogan catchment area. Well, any nursery or school is able to accept applications from outside their catchment area, but as in all cases, the council prioritises the admission of pupils who reside within the catchment area of Cogan Primary School. And then there were a number, so those are the ones that were objecting. The comments in favour was to do with a single governance. Theme 10 was single governance and vision or policies. And the respondents noted that a single governance and vision for the educational settings would be beneficial for long-term standards and excellent provision, amongst other things. I won't go into the full depth. Theme 11, the proposals would lead to a smoother transition for pupils and streamlined communication. And respondents felt in that case that the proposed 3 to 11 model would benefit teaching and learning. And that nursery pupils would also be more familiar with the primary phase and become accustomed to the school identity from an earlier age, which could help decrease anxiety during transition. Respondents also noted that arrangements and communications would be easier for parents with children at both stages of education. Theme 12, there would be financial savings efficiencies, and that's, as I've mentioned, opportunities for financial and resource savings through economies of scale. Theme 11, It would provide education from earlier age and children understand clear expectations. The respondents noted that that it would provide greater continuity and enable rapport to be built between pupils and staff from an earlier point in the pupil's educational journey. Theme 14, this would facilitate learning experiences, shared activity days and learning. And respondents noted that there would be opportunities for collaborative learning experiences and shared activity days, and also mentoring of younger pupils by primary pupils, which is something actually that we've seen elsewhere. And the final theme was earlier additional learning needs and safeguarding early identification. So from our perspective, current additional learning need provision would not be changed as a result of these proposals. However, respondents noted that the support and safeguarding needs of pupils could be identified at an earlier age and monitored within a single setting to ensure continuity. So that was the feedback from the consultation. There is within the report feedback from Estin, and their response was they concluded that the proposals are likely to maintain current standards in terms of education, provision, and leadership and management. And Estin normally would not say any more than that anyway. There was a community impact assessment, which is also within the report. That was undertaken and published alongside the consultation document. No comments in relation to it have been received during the consultation. There was a mention about travel arrangements. Well, unless a child had a statement of special educational needs, we would not be providing transport to school for those children. But actually, as both nurseries will stay on the existing sites, there will be no difference to what currently happens. The other thing that we did was the Cabinet report was taken to Learning and Culture Scrutiny for consideration on the 14th of October, and the minutes are available alongside other scrutiny reports on the Council's website. And there was a very full discussion of it. Unfortunately, there were no speakers registered at that meeting, no public speakers. But obviously it's available to watch on webcast. And there were a number of discussions which are mentioned in the minutes. I was actually present at it again, which was looking at previous experiences of amalgamations, and about the economic side of it. And there was also something that was raised, which I actually hadn't up until that point been aware of, is that that where nurseries and primaries have got separate, whether it be literacy schemes or other forms of learning, that actually having a coordinated approach will also be beneficial for pupils. And their recommendation at the end of that was that the resolutions as contained in the reference from Cabinet dated the 13th of September 2021. So there were a couple of other comments, if you can bear with me, that I picked out of the report, which I would like to cover. There had been a couple of other places that, if you look at page 3 of the consultation response report, that's Appendix B, it does talk about the fact that there was a petition on behalf of Butte Cottage Nursery School stakeholders, and there were over 1,000 signatures on that. However, what is difficult is that site, initially the petition included information that the nursery would be relocated to the Evenlode Primary School site. I mean, that was later changed to note that the relocation is not part of the proposal, but would be a priority if the proposal were to be approved. But I think what I would comment on there. This proposal is not about relocating either. By that information being published, it meant that a very large proportion of the consultation responses received were based on inaccurate information. And that was a shame, because it's always good to have a constructive and accurate dialogue. To clarify, the council has allocated 1.32 million as part of the 21st Century Schools programme to support reconfiguration of nursery provision in Penarth. That's been openly available ever since the Band B programme was first published. And therefore, should the proposals be approved, and this has been said right from the first part of the consultation document, the council would consider the feasibility and rationale for relocating nursery provision at Evenlode Primary School onto a single site. However, that would be subject to a number of factors, including highways, and we've all heard about the traffic issues around that area, and cost, whether or not that was possible. The council would undertake a full feasibility assessment into that. So that would have to be considered fully. And if it was viewed as a proposal that was worth taking forward, it would be subject to a separate consultation exercise as part of the planning process. And some people have said, oh, there wouldn't be another statutory consultation. Well, actually, planning consultations are statutory, but there wouldn't be another education statutory one because, as I said right at the start, there are certain factors that influence whether or not you have a statutory education consultation, and the fact that that move would be under a mile means that it would not qualify to have a statutory consultation, as in this case. But there would be a consultation if the feasibility assessment suggested that it was a proposal that we would want to take forward. So being totally open on that, we are a long way away from that. This is purely to do with an amalgamation that would keep both nurseries operating on their same site. I'm sorry that I've gone on for so long. I can see that Councillor Gray wants to come in, so if we can do that before I go to recommendations.
Yep, sure, Ben.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Leader. I think it was necessary to go through everything that you have, and it was really useful to see that. I've read all of the report, consultation, the equality impact assessment before coming to this meeting, and it's what we do for every meeting to be fully briefed and understand. But there has been a particular amount of interest in this topic, and so it's been particularly important to underline those things. The first thing I wanted to start out with by saying is I am 100% opposed to the move of any cottage nursery site to the Evenlode site today, or indeed into the future, if nothing were to change in how it is laid out. I get a lot of comments from local residents about traffic issues. The site is not suitable, and I think it's important to put that out there in the context of then actually what we're talking about is what the consultation was about, which is the reconfiguration of leadership and governance, and it's not about moving. If we were talking about moving the site today, I would totally be against it based on the issues that we see as local ward members, and I'm sure Catherine would agree. And actually, it's that subject that you touched on, Liz, in terms of information, which is still really frustrating. We have people who continue to make comments and make contact who are under the absolute belief that there is a closure of, and I'm sorry to keep talking about Butte Cottage, that's what I've been contacted about. I haven't really been contacted about Cogan. That there'll be some sort of closure of Butte Cottage. That's absolutely not the case, as you've laid out very clearly, and frankly is laid out very clearly in the consultation documents. The fact that certain national politicians have chosen to wade in and be loose with the words they use to further stoke this is a particular annoyance to me, I'm sure to others, and they don't need to clarify it, do they? Because their aim is to create a feeling of fear. I stand for Butte Cottage staying where it is. All of the kids who are there experiencing the same thing, having read all the consultation, I'm pretty sure that's what everyone was talking about and what they wanted to preserve. So I can hand on heart say I'm preserving that by supporting what the recommendations are going to be coming forward, I'm sure, from the Deputy Leader, having read the report, because we're going to be preserving that site. And it's not simply a case of, as you said, it's not a referendum on it because X number of people ticked a box saying they're not in favour, when the arguments have nothing to do with the subject matter. I mean, I could bottle it down to something really simple about, going out, making a decision about going somewhere, and people bring a totally irrelevant list of things to the table. You discount them and then you make a decision based on the stuff that's in front of you. Now, nothing has been irrelevant in terms of looking after children's education, and that's been clearly dealt with in the report. And the way that actually it's been pulled together under these themes, I think, is really useful for analysing and interpreting it. So I'd like to thank the officers who pulled together the report, because I think it was a really succinct way of understanding where all those have been. And having read all the responses, as the Deputy Leader has, I can see why we've got to where we are. So you haven't proposed anything yet, so I won't second anything yet, but I certainly support the outcome in this report, and I can see the benefits for leadership and governance. I mean, it was Cabinet Minute C662 when we discussed it in September. I talked about wanting to understand and make sure everyone got involved in the consultation. I'm really pleased to see so many people did get involved in the consultation. As a governor at Even Load, I have seen what they've written. I made a particular point of not being involved in any joint writing of that process because I don't think it was appropriate. But clearly, I can see that in the context of Butte Cottage, at least, I've got more experience to see that the environment and the support that's there at Even Load is going to be a useful addition to what is already a solid group of staff supporting young children in this nursery school setting. And those staff in that nursery school setting are not going to change as a result of what's being proposed. And so therefore I can only see it as a bonus to that situation. That's why I am able to support the proposals as they stand. I think just one final point about context and so forth. I think we all need to be very careful about language, and I think in trying to be as transparent as possible, we have opened up this conversation. The timelines involved that you referred to at the end of what you said, Deputy Leader, I think is important to note, and actually, it's for everyone at that time to make those determinations as they see fit. And who knows if any of this will be a councillor when those conversations happen. So I'm going to deal with what's in front of me here and the conversation and the context we have. And I look forward to hearing the recommendations put forward before Cabinet. But I just I feel it's really important to highlight and underline the points you've made about what is relevant. And actually, when it comes to what people have contacted me about, the only points that could be seen as being relevant was where there was it was sort of proposed that somehow it should just be accepted because of the change of leadership, therefore things won't happen, or therefore things will be worse. I actually haven't seen any empirical evidence to support that. I've certainly seen other schools with their nursery units and ESTIN reports that we've had through here at Cabinet and seen that that's not the case. But everything else has been about subject matter that wasn't part of this consultation. And as the site is not closing, the kids are not moving, everything is staying as it is, the outdoor space everyone is so keen about, and how that is something which is so treasured by everybody, I can see why the consultation response report is leaning the way it is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vern. Thank you for that. I don't want to make a comment in the end. I think, Peter. you want to come in now and then, Catherine? And if nobody else wants, I want to make a comment. Peter.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Liz, for a very, very comprehensive capturing and highlighting of some of the issues. I've taken interest in this report, not least Cogan Nursery, which is in my own ward and for which I spent time as a governor. But I think it's only fair for me to share with you that I have been contacted by a number of residents, and without their express permission, I'm not going to attempt to name anybody. What I will say is that I, like you, am aware that there has been a certain amount of misinformation, or if I'm going to be generous, incorrect interpretation of the proposals. And so I'd like just to ask you, for the avoidance of absolutely any doubt, can you please reconfirm that we are not proposing to close and relocate, and only to merge the governance and management of these two facilities, which would address the salient issue that some people have flagged up to me. Thank you.
Liz, do you want to do that?
Yeah. Thank you, Peter. I can categorically say there is no proposal. And I think further, one thing that I was really disappointed about is that there was publication of some generic plans we have within 21st Century Schools. There was some publication we have generic plans for sort of carbon zero schools that we can adjust in for different circumstances. So we put together a carbon zero 420 place primary school with nursery, a 210 primary school with nursery, and a standalone nursery in case, for example, we were retrofitting a school and we needed to put a nursery, you know, to fit on a site. And they were labelled, the actual title on the documents was Vale Carbon Zero Nursery. The title was cut off and it was published as this is the reason why they're going to move the school. You know, that was not acceptable use of information. And so I will again say there is no plan. There will be a feasibility study should this go through today, but that will be fully considered. There is no plan for the nurseries, either nursery, to do anything other than be on their existing site should this be agreed today.
Okay, thank you, that's clear. Catherine.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Deputy Leader. I'll try and be brief. Really, in relation to what both Councillor King and Councillor Gray have said, it's the same for me. We've been approached by various people in relation to this issue. And yes, I mean, having this been my first term as a councillor, I have found it on the whole generally surprising how much misinformation is out there. But in relation to this particular topic, it's been really disturbing. And I find it disappointing then that so many people get so upset about something that isn't actually what's really going on. So it is, from my own point of view, having had children or still have a child in primary school, I think everything we can do to support the provision of education throughout the foundation stage up until the transition to secondary school is our responsibility to do so. I also think that when it came to scrutiny, I was fully prepared for, bearing in mind how many members of the public had answered our consultation. I really expected that there would have been people at our scrutiny committees. We do so much to encourage the public to get involved in the processes that we have, and I was really surprised that nobody had come to that scrutiny committee to have that conversation. So, yes, just reiterating what Councillor Gray and Councillor King have said, I mean, yes, I'm also a governor for Even Load. Yes, I'm also a councillor for the Plymouth ward. Yes, I get enough complaints about the state of parking and vehicles that are on Even Load Avenue. But ultimately, from my point of view, as a cabinet member and a local councillor and a mother, the education provision is the most important thing, and to change the governance and leadership of this school has got to be for the benefit of all of these children. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, Eddie, let me come in.
Yeah, thank you. It's not you would be surprised, wouldn't you? This isn't in my ward, but clearly as a cabinet member, I've also been approached and had several correspondence regarding it. And from the points that have been made to me, certainly from the response and the information we've been given this afternoon, I think that those people will be reassured on the way forward. So thank you for putting the record straight for many of those who have that misinformation.
Okay, good. Thank you. As you say, it's a comprehensive report come forward. You've highlighted all the things, but you know, somebody said to me the other week, we're talking about education and things, and they said, "Well, have you been on governors?" I said, "Although my dotage, I'd probably been on about 11 in there, in the way that they were, and 3 of them are actually kind of mentioned within this report." And it's a case of things change, and when things change, hopefully they change for the better. And I think this is one of those things that would be for the better. And I'll give you the examples if you want, because I was a governor on Cadoxton Infant School, Cadoxton Junior School, and Cadoxton Nursery School, and they were all separate many years ago. And then many years ago, we combined the junior and the infant school to make Cadoxton Primary School. But we still had a separate nursery at the time. And clearly what's happened now, and then I was a governor on that primary school, but what's happened in the recent past is that we've now amalgamated the nursery school with Cadoxton Primary School. You know, Cadoxton Junior School and Cadoxton Infant School were virtually on the same site, and you could put a corridor between them. The nursery is across a road, in essence, by a community centre. But the point is, it becomes a whole school with, and I think the benefit is you have one management team, you have one governorship, you have one stream of education, you have continuity in those education fields, and it works. And it's not something that we've just plucked out of the air, because it's something which we've been doing for quite a long time in having schools which are 3 to 11. And in fact, this is what we're proposing. So, you know, and as I said, in terms of Cadoxton, for example, the nursery school is on a different site. It's across a road, basically, not far away, but it's still part of now the Cadoxton amalgamated schools. And it works, one head, one management team, one set of governors, everybody works together so that the children come in and there's a seamless transition between the lot. And the continuity of learning in the same way is something which is also important, so that the children go in, they know exactly where they are, they can mix with the other pupils within those sectors, and they can just go through as far as the school family, if you want, and they become the cohorts going forward. Personally, I think it's the way that we've agreed. As I said, nothing new. We've been doing this for a long time, and I just think it is really it's sad. It's sad that people put out misinformation, and I think some of it is misinformation, and I don't understand why. Let's talk about the facts. Let's talk about the reality of it, but more particularly, let's talk about the education of the children. And I think that's tantamount, the education of the children. So I'm happy to go along with this, and I know you haven't made the recommendations yet, so I'll leave you make the recommendations, Liz.
Thank you, Leader. Well, we've got 3 recommendations before us. The Cabinet considers this report, the consultation report, which is Appendix A, the consultation response report, which is Appendix B, and other appendices included as part of this report comprising the equality and community impact assessments. So can I just double check that everybody has fully read those? I know that many have mentioned that they have. The Cabinet considers the proposals to amalgamate Bute Cottage Nursery with Evenlode Primary and Cogan Nursery with Cogan Primary School. And again, everybody's spoken, so fairly happy that everyone's read those. And that Cabinet approves the proposals to amalgamate Bute Cottage Nursery with Evenlode Primary School and Cogan Nursery with Cogan Primary School through the publication of the proposals in the form of a statutory notice. So we would therefore go forward to a statutory notice, which again, going back, that's in accordance with School Standards and Organisation Wales Act 2013 and the School Organisation Code 2018. So I would therefore move.
Okay, that's good. And if you need a formal seconder, I will formally second. I don't know if anybody else got any comments. I think from what I heard, everybody is really in favour of this. So in that case, that is carried. Thank you very much for that. In terms of anything else on the agenda, I did, as I said, have one urgent item under part 1, which I haven't dealt with, and I don't have anything under urgent or anything under part 2. So can I thank you for your forbearance? Thank you for the time we've taken. I think it's important that we make sure that when reports are brought together, people understand why they're here and the content and the rationale behind them. So I think we've done that today extremely well. So can I thank you for your time? That is the end of the meeting. Can I thank everybody for their attendance? And I'll ask the recording to be stopped now. And I'll see you all either next time, or I'm sure in another meeting in the next day or two, if not today.